consulting firm before being recruited as an executive with the Australian Department of Defense. He has a Master's of Administration majoring in International Strategic Studies and Government Policy, a Bachelor of Science majoring in Applied Technology, and a graduate diploma in Logistics. As a senior military officer, he was selected to and is a graduate of the Australian Army Command and Staff College in 1995. Malcolm has had a passion for his adopted country, America, and speaks at groups and organizations across California on a range of subjects. They include America's godly heritage and the truth of America's role as a beacon of hope and light for the world to follow. As former Chief Executive Officer of EIPC,
Election Integrity Project California.
there he goes, as he incorporates the importance of cleaning up election fraud in California as a fundamental requirement for America to fulfill the God-given leadership role in the world. He has 2 grown daughters and 3 granddaughters, and he has come here today to give a speech to us. I'd like to Mr.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
So I suppose I better start by saying, g'day. That's better.
Okay.
I'd like to tell you a bit of a story.
Are you live?
Is this too loud? No. I'd like to give you a bit of a story. I grew up in Australia on a farm, a sheep farm and a fruit farm, and we had a wonderful life. I can still remember my father hitching up the draft horses to plough the fields. So I don't know anybody here able to remember that. We lived in a drought area. We didn't have running water. We had tank water, and we had a bath once a week, whether we needed it or not. And it was one person after the other in the same water. My father was always last. You can imagine what that was like. It's probably why I never have a bath now. If I do have a bath, I have a shower straight after. But when I turned 6, we had some tragedies in our family. My youngest sister had already passed away at the age of 2 from a farm accident, an accident on the farm. My brother passed away when I was 6, and he was 16. And then when I was 16 myself, my father passed away from an accident. Sadly, that tragedy continued. My granddaughter, when she was 15 months old, Ashley, she went to the Lord, and although I grieve for that, and my daughter grieves, I know where she is. She's in the arms of perfect love, and what better place to be given the state of this world. But when my brother died, that was really a tough time for me. He was my favourite brother. I went everywhere with him on the bike. This particular night, he didn't take me, and he got cut off a mile down the road and was killed. He didn't have his helmet on for the first time, and he got a little knock there. And that was the end of my brother Kenny. But what held me in good stead was my grandmother came to live with us for a little while to help us out through these tragedies. And she brought with her a 10-volume Bible story set of books. And you might remember them, they were blue, and they were about so big, and they talk about the Old Testament and the New Testament. Well, in one of those books, in the New Testament, there was a picture of that I hold on to now. It was a picture of an American family. And the American family was sitting down to dinner, and a father in a grey suit, 2 perfectly dressed kids at the end of the table, and of course I'd never seen that in our place. We had 7 kids, and it was a fight over the food at dinner time, and we never went to the table clean because we obviously just come off the farm, and only had a bath once a week. But it struck me that this was a perfect family. And mother, in a perfectly ironed dress, permed hair, just come from the day spa. I didn't even know what a day spa was until I came here. And she was carving up a roast. And what struck me about that picture was who was outside. And when my grandmother came to live with us, we started going to Sunday school. And so I worked out very quickly that the guy outside was wearing a goatee and a long white robe was Jesus Christ. And the caption at the bottom was, if Jesus knocked on your door tonight, would you invite him in for supper? And I've held on to that image my whole life. Every time I thought I was going off the wrong track, I'd look around and there's Jesus knocking. All I had to do was invite him in. And it really did get me through some really tough times, like the death of my grandchild and the separation from my soulmate in Connecticut. In about 1963, we got a black and white TV. And the black and white TV had all American programming. And I remember thinking, wow, what a country. You know, I knew Billy Graham. He was at the MCG with 150,000 people in Melbourne, Australia. I knew of In God We Trust. I knew that you sang God Bless America or the national anthem before every sporting event. Yeah. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I knew about these things, but what I didn't know fully was just how wholesome Americans were. I mean, I love Father Knows Best. I love Leave It to Beaver. I love the Andy Griffith Show. And for the young people here, I love Superman, Truth, Justice, and the American Way. And of course, who could ever forget Dale Evans and Roy Rogers riding off into the sunset. Happy trails to you. Come on, you know it. Exactly. Exactly. And I just saw something really special about America, that it was a godly country. Now, I never thought I'd come to America. I was Australian through and through until I met my bride out of Connecticut. So when I came to America in 2009, on this day 10 years ago, I did my due diligence. And I saw that the whole of New England was blue. And I said, yes, I'm coming to a blue part of the country. Of course, blue in Australia is conservative. And it used to be that way here in America too, until some idiot changed it. About 35 years ago, I think it was on a political TV campaign where they put up on the screen blue and red, and blue just happened to be a Democrat. But I didn't know that at the time, so I soon worked out that there was something different in people's philosophies and ideals and morals in Connecticut than what I was used to. When I came to America, I consumed, first up, when I came to America, my wife decided to run for Attorney General. Now, I consumed everything about America. Every Saturday, we spent the whole day literally, in bed. We were reading the Constitution, the Mayflower Compact, the Federalist Papers, Jefferson's diaries, Washington's War, the Constitution, the Mayflower Compact, and Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. And I learned a little bit about America from Atlas Shrugged, which my then girlfriend insisted that I read, and she questioned me on it on my way home on the train each day, because she wanted to know what I really was, whether I was a conservative. In fact, when I went to Staff College, I found out very quickly that I was different to a lot of my fellow majors in the military officers. I got called a redneck. I didn't even know what a redneck was. And I looked it up and I thought, oh, yeah, that's me. So I knew a lot about American history. And when my wife ran for Attorney General, I learned a little bit about the corrupt GOPe. And it is corrupt. It's corrupt here, it's corrupt in Connecticut, it's corrupt right across this country. She put in her papers and she developed her platform, and the platform was freedom, faith, and fortune. The GOPe insisted she take faith out of her platform, or they didn't even consider any endorsement or support for her. Ugh. Well, I found out very early in my marriage that my wife could not be told what to do. And so she was a little bit like Donald Trump. And she was a Tea Party, she was a darling of the Tea Party in Connecticut. She was a gun owner, she defended gun ranges in a law firm. So she was very much the opposite of what the Republican Party, and I didn't know this at the time. On the evening of the convention, the Republican Party Rules Committee changed the rules on us, such that she had to have a superdelegate be her nominating speech, deliver her nominating speech. By that stage, of course, as planned by the Republican Party, there was no superdelegates left. They'd all been allocated. And my lawyer at the time, who was representing Martha, said, it's going to be okay, Malcolm. People know me. And I didn't understand that, but she just won a US Supreme Court case case in the US Supreme Court on reverse discrimination. I think you all know what reverse discrimination is. So the next morning she goes up to the headquarters of the GOPe at the convention centre, and she places her briefcase down. She said, it's okay, Malcolm. Everybody knew this woman because of that case. She called for the chairman. The chairman came out and he said, well, guys, have you sorted out your problem yet? Have you got a super delegate? And she calmly said, no, we haven't, but you've got a problem. And I thought, what's she going to say? She said, in my bag, I've got a court order to close down this convention if you don't put the rules back to where they were last night.
There you go.
Wow.
He panicked
Nice.
because at that stage we had 1,300 delegates in the convention centre.
Oh, yeah.
And it would have been a mess. Well, he rushed away, came back and said, it's all fixed, you're right to go. I was the most hated person in Connecticut after that, because 6 months later they found out that there was nothing in the briefcase. I didn't like our chairman anyway, so I didn't, no more reply back. We went to the convention, she won the convention, 67, I'll tell you this first, 15% was the number that was required of the vote to get into the primary. They were supporting another guy completely. She won the convention, 67% to 15%. Just enough for him to primary. The Republican Party, even though she got the endorsement of the party, the Republican Party worked overtime to stop her winning the primary. Well, I learned very early that Martha was an incredibly determined woman. And we won the primary 60.5% to 33.5% on $25,000.
Wow.
He spent $280,000.
Wow.
And he had the full backing of the Republican Party. We went on to the general election, and we lost the general election, but I learned a lot of lessons. Firstly, I learned about corrupt politicians. I learned about what the GOPe was really like, and I learned the inner workings of the Republican Party. But we still got a credible 45% of the vote in the general election on an extra $100,000. Our opponent spent $1.8 million. So what it told me was that as long as you have something that you really, truly believe in, if you are willing to work hard, then you can make a big difference in politics. Now, with all due respect to Jessica Patterson, and there's a few people I don't have much time for, she said at the convention that we need money to be successful here in California. You know, California last year had $35 million to spend. You know how much Texas had?
6 million? 5
5.5 million. And Texas gained 7 seats. We lost all up 47, and for the third election in a row, we didn't have anybody representing us in the Senate. 47. The Republican Party here in California has let this party die by not registering voters.
Yes.
Let me just tell you a little known fact. Jim Brody, when he first became chair, he was a volunteer, right?
Right.
The year he volunteered, before they started paying people, that very year, and the FEC records show it, he spent about, for 4 companies, 4 consulting firms, over nearly $1 million.
Oh, wow.
Over 200,000 each. Well, I went and had a look at what those 4 companies were. There was 3 that I kind of knew of vaguely, but there's one I knew of intimately. It was Jim Brody Consulting. He paid himself over $220,000 when he was supposed to be volunteering. And how many people work for Jim Brody? One person. So believe me, this party has no interest in helping you go out. In fact, I got some transcript of the event up in Sacramento after the convention, where Arnold Schwarzenegger and his crew said, we've got to separate ourselves from Trump. We've got to have a platform that includes, wait for it, pro-choice, and, wait for this, global warming. That is on their platform. You can go and look that up right now. You can go. Now, what they don't get is this. I ran for the campaign for Phil Liberatory here in California in the 39th. we had Trump everywhere. I support Trump on our materials, on our yard signs, and we came in third behind young Kim, then the Democrat, and then Phil Liberatore, and he got over 100% more votes than Bob Huff and Sean Steele together. Is it Sean Steele?
Nelson.
Nelson, together. And they outspent him 10-1. Again, it just proved that if you believe in your message, don't be afraid to spread it. That's the problem with the Republican Party right now. We are afraid to spread the message.
Yeah.
Now, in the 2018 elections, America is the greatest country this world's ever seen. It's a beacon of hope and light for the world to look to. But there are those on the liberal progressive left, and I don't call them Democrats and Republicans, I call them the liberal progressive left and Americans. Because Democrat people love this country just as much as you do. They just have an Alexander Hamilton view of the world as opposed to a Thomas Jefferson view. Big government versus small government. But they still love America. But they've been hijacked by the liberal progressive left. So it's true that Democrats voted for Obama, but it's also true that they want something back. They want an America back. And this is what happened in the general election. 108 million Americans were waking up every day. Remember, about 132 million participate in the general election. Look at the precinct map this time compared to 2012 and 2008. It's red from sea to shining sea. Why? Because a different demographic voted this time round. This time you had 132 million normally vote, and there's 108 million Americans, in other words, 240 million Americans eligible to vote. And 108 million Americans were waking up every day and saying, what the frick happened to my country? What the heck happened to my country? When did we decide to have a separation of church and state? Well, we the people didn't. That is the greatest lie ever perpetrated on the American people. The founding fathers, in fact, John Adams said this, our constitutional republic cannot survive without a moral and religious foundation. Yes. They knew that our Judeo-Christian principles had to be embedded into our governmental framework. It's in the Constitution. Some people will tell you that God is not mentioned in the Constitution. Let me just reassure you, He is.
Yes, He is.
In the last, in Article 7, Section 3, or no, Article 7, it says, we the signers, and I'll paraphrase, sign this document on the 17th day of September 1787 in the year of our Lord. They wanted the Lord to have coverage over this great constitution that they'd been developing. So these Americans are waking up and just being told absolute lies. The next question they were asking is, when did we decide that we would shut up our pastors from the pulpit? Well, we didn't. That was the Democrat Party, because they set up a system so that 501c3 status would be given to not-for-profits. Okay? Now, a year later, as they knew would happen, the churches said, what about me? It isn't fair. The bottom line is, they wanted to get 501c3 status because they were losing money from the people from the pews and money from tithing, because it was going to not-for-profits and they'd get a tax-free tax return. Well, it's the day the pastors sold their soul for 30 pieces of silver. No longer could they represent their community the way they used to. Just like the father is the head of the family, the mother is the protector of life, just like America is a beacon of hope and light for the rest of the world to look to, well, the pastors were the beacon of hope, and the churches were the beacon of hope and light for our communities. Now, the fact that they could no longer speak to the truth from the pulpit, because they wanted the money, meant that they were no longer your voice. So, then these 108 million Americans are waking up and said, my gosh, we've lost church out of our government, we've lost pastors speaking from the pulpit. We've now lost, in 1963, religious instruction in schools and prayer in schools. Why? Because of the separation of church and state. That lie that was perpetrated on the American people. It all fell back to that. And then these 108 million Americans woke up again and said, when did we the people decide it was okay to kill 59 million babies in the womb? You didn't. Five people in the US Supreme Court decided that. Okay? We had lost control of our government. Why? Because for 71 years, you, and you ma'am, and you sir, have remained quiet. Why have we remained quiet while the Liberal Progressives take over our schools, our colleges, our churches with liberal progressiveness? Religious liberalism has taken over our churches. Our families have been taken over by what? The government. Why? Because they provide breakfast for the kids, they provide lunch for the kids, they provide dinner for the kids before and after school care. That's the plan of the Liberal Progressive left. And God has even been taken out of the families. You know, the founding fathers knew that God had to be in our system. In fact, the first act, one of the first acts they issued out of Congress in 1787 was an act to give over lands to the heathens, the Indians, that's what they call them, the heathens, to spread the gospel. That was from your government. They even had a church in Congress. And that's all been taken away because we, the people, remained quiet. We did not fight back because we feared being labelled a bigot, a homophobe, a misogynist, or a racist. We didn't want to get into that argument. And on top of that, we failed our kids because we said, it's okay, Johnny, you can go to the next grade, you're not ready, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. In Connecticut, they banned valedictorian speeches because they don't want to hurt the feelings of the other people. That's we the people. We've allowed that to happen because we remained moot. Well, in 2015-16, Donald J. Trump gave the American people license to speak to the truth again. License to no longer be politically correct. License to say what you mean and mean what you say. And folks, we're going to have to start having that discussion with our families, the truth discussion, with our families, with our friends, with our mothers and fathers, with our kids. And we're going to have to be prepared to lose folk from our circle of influence. Because if we don't, what happened on the 8th of November 2016 will have been lost. And the Liberal Progressive left will control the minds of our kids going into the 21st century or the late 20th century. We've got to fight back. Believe me when I say that Donald Trump is a Christian through and through. He's a baby Christian on milk, but he's a Christian. If you ever get a chance, look up Kim Clement and the Trump prophecies. In 2007, he predicted Donald Trump would be a trumpet from the White House. And he said, a brash man will go into the White House whispering my name, which is exactly right. Trump has become so much more bold about invoking God than ever before. When was the last time you heard a president give an Easter speech from the White House? Last time I remember was when Trump did it. And he'll do another one this year. He's the only president in recent times that insists on prayer before every departmental meeting.
Wow.
And he surrounded himself with Christians. Across the campaign, young millennials, not the older millennials, young millennials and Z generation filled his campaign offices with God-fearing young men and women. Born-again virgins, as they used to tell me. Born-again Christians. And they are the ones that are going to take this country forward. But we have to come alongside and say, Bob, Judy, it's okay. We failed you. And admit that we failed, but we're not going to fail you again, and we're going to be right beside you when you take your country back. We, the elderly folk, the baby boomers, must do that. Absolutely. And churches across the country, I went to about 30 states, maybe a little less, and I went to church every Sunday. I insisted, and I convinced New York headquarters to not run officers in the morning, that we should leave that to prayer. So, and going to church. So, Donald Trump has given you guys a chance. A lot of people say that if Hillary Rodham Clinton had got in, that America would have been changed for 40 years. That is a lie. the American experiment was over. Why was it over? Because your constitution would have been broken down bit by bit through executive orders. By the time we got those appeals up through the 13 courts of appeal and the US Supreme Court, she would have filled her Supreme Court with liberal progressives, judges, and they would have put into law what she'd done to our constitution. And so that was it, folks. It was over. And as goes America, so goes the world. My country would be next, followed by New Zealand, Canada, if she hasn't already gone, and Great Britain or England. My belief is Europe's done. Europe is done. So, America has been given a chance, and I believe that Donald J. Trump was anointed by God to do the work he wanted to do and wanted him to do. Now, a lot of people say, well, Donald J. Trump, why would God choose him? And I just have a little chuckle to myself and I say, I seem to remember in the Bible somewhere that a lot of guys that God anointed to do his work weren't the best guys in the world. When you think about Abraham, he didn't trust God. He slept with when he was told he was going to have a baby to his wife, he slept with the wife's maid. What about Moses? He wasn't the ideal leader. What about Noah? Didn't believe God, was a drunk. What about Gideon? I don't know how many times Gideon told God to prove it again with the fleece. What about Paul on the road to Damascus? Where was he going? What was he going to do in Damascus?
Slaughter Christians, arrest them.
Sort of what? Who?
Christians.
Christians. So God can, in my book, God can choose whomever he wishes to do his bidding. And I believe that Donald J. Trump was given that responsibility. And he's the only person that I know that could do the job with the pressure and the crap that's being sent his way. I want to come back to the abortion thing just for a sec before I go on. When I talk about abortion, I believe that life begins from conception. I'm sure a lot of people do. But we are at the stage now where we are murdering babies outside the womb. And I pray for a US attorney to rise up and prosecute anybody that allows a baby to die outside the womb. And I think, so back to abortion for a second. You know, when people say to me, what's your God done for the world? And this is how I argue the abortion issue. And what has your God done for the world? And I kind of chuckle a little bit and I say, apart from the obvious, saving us all from eternal hell if we look to him. No, he's done a fair bit. And they say, well, where has God been with the poverty and the wars and the disease and the cancer? Why hasn't he raised up a man or a woman to fulfill that role? And I look them straight in the eyes, I'm looking at you, man, and I say, maybe, just maybe, because God gave us free will, we killed that person in the womb. God considers life that begins at conception, whether we like it or not. And I'm disgusted in my sister from Australia, Helen Reddy, who in the 60s released a song, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. Know the song?
I've heard of it.
I am a woman, hear me roar. You know, I love that song because I believed in women. I didn't understand God's role. In that song, in one of the verses, it says, I'm just an embryo, but I've got a long, long way to grow until my brother comes to understand. She wasn't talking about the embryo in the womb. She was talking about an organisation. The irony is just palpable. That she understood her organisation was an embryo and it needed help to grow, but forgot about the life in the womb. I mean, we've been given a specific right, you women, and that is a protector of life, to house a human being in a safe place until it is ready to be born. And we've denied that. It's ruined families, it's ruined black American families, it's ruined white American families, and it's destroyed our culture because we've allowed that to happen. So, Trump has given America another chance. And your founding fathers gave you, the world and you, a gift each. It gave the world a true understanding of freedom, 1776. That freedom comes from God and not from a king, a queen, or emperor. That had never been done before. For the first time, a people, it wasn't a country, a people declared the freedoms come from God. And look what happened from 1787 to 1969, in a mere 182 years. You guys, despite having all these resources before 1787, stuff in the ground, minds that could think, philosophers, mathematicians, scientists, you went from horse and cart to man on the moon in 182 years. Because why? Because you were suddenly free to pursue and free to own. The liberal progressive left wants to take that away from you. But the most important gift the Founding Fathers gave you after that is the gift to participate in your elections. That had never been done before. You were able to participate in politics of the greatest constitutional republic the world's ever seen. And what shocks me is just how laissez-faire we are with that gift. Proposition 14, who was talking about Proposition 14? Who spoke about Proposition 14?
No, Rick mentioned it.
Proposition 14 in 2010 was passed, and remember this, in 2010 you had about 25 million eligible voters here in this state. It was passed by 2.8 million people because of the rest of you did not get out to vote.
Yeah.
It's our fault that we're in the situation now because we don't value what the Founding Fathers gave you. They would be shocked to know that only 50% of Americans or thereabouts come out to vote, not in a normal election, but in a presidential election. And where does politics start? The most important thing we can do is get involved in politics right down here at the grassroots, because that's where future leaders come from. And yet we don't do it. We come out for a presidential election, and we get people like, was it Omar? He worked his butt off, got $1 million, and the Republican Party didn't support him. He raised over $1 million. We have to get back to understanding what this country is all about. This country, founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Think about the Mayflower Compact. What did the Mayflower Compact say? In paraphrasing, it said, we give over these lands for King George and for the furtherance of the Christian faith. And when the Founding Fathers were talking about the Constitution, signing the Constitution, they weren't talking about Taoism or Buddhism or Islam. They were talking about a Judeo-Christian principles to uphold this country. We have failed in doing our part. No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the royal we have failed. So Donald Trump got elected, and he's been fought against ever since. The Republican Party here in California would not even mention his name at the convention because they don't get it. They think going to the center is what the American people want. Well, here in California, you've got 12 million people that don't participate. You know, some Democrats, some Republicans, some declined to states, but a whole host of 6 million that aren't registered. And I know where those people come from. They come from conservative towns. They think they've lost their voice. They think they've lost the opportunity to make this country great again. Well, that's not true. God's got his hand on this country, and God will make the difference. Every day I wake up and I say, hey, okay, Lord, very quick story, I got a job in the White House as Deputy White House Liaison. I got the job.
Deputy White House what?
Deputy White House Liaison for the Health and Human Services.
Liaison? Okay.
Yeah, Deputy White House.
Okay.
And it's a classic learning moment from God. I came back here, they said, how quickly can you get back? I even had my personal number, my email address, my phone number for my new phone, and also an office. And they said, how quickly can you get back? I said, well, give me 2 weeks. I said, no problems. I came home, it was a big 6-figure wage, and I'd spent the money in my mind before I got off the plane in LA. And 2 weeks later, I'm packing the car, and not so fast. I get a phone call from the presidential person office saying, Malcolm, we're really sorry, but because of these immigration issues and conflict between white Caucasians and black and Latinos, we've made the policy we will only employ American citizens. God was telling me that for 6 years you relied on me. The moment I gave you control back, not once in that time when I gave you that job, did you ask me what you wanted me, what I wanted you to do with that money. And it was a real thing. And so every morning we should wake up and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do today? Because He's in control. Totally in control. And He's got His hand in this country. We just need to step out in faith. And we need to undermine the GOPe in California. I don't know who always said that we've got to, bite the bullet. No. That's what happened the last 71 years when we remained mute. We've got to fight. Because the fight is not only with the Liberal Progressives, it's with our own party. 12 senators voted against the President's emergency plan. 12 senators. I pray that people will remember those people.
Republican U.S. senators.
And in the next election, and kick them out of office.
Get new Republicans.
Get new Conservatives.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the Republican Party anymore. I'm interested in conservative politics that are the foundation of this country.
Yeah.
So, after the election, I'll tell you a bit about the Election Integrity Project. I was asked to go to a meeting in March after I lost my job in the White House because I was too smart for my own boots. I'd already cancelled the job that I was offered here as Chief Operations Officer for a tourism country. Anybody know Noel Elwyn Henschel? She owns American Tourism International. And she offered me a job as the Chief Operations Officer. And so when I got the job in the White House, I cancelled the job there. When I found out that I wasn't going to the White House, I said, hey, Noel, no, sorry, mate, it's gone. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And I can tell you, I would have been miserable in DC because I wouldn't have been able to speak to the truth of politics. So, where was I? So I went to a private meeting up in Fresno. And at that meeting, there was Linda Payne. You probably know who Linda Payne is. Ruth Weiss, Stephen Frank, and a whole host of other people that I had never met before. I'd heard of some of them. And Christian Adams, the preeminent election lawyer in the country. In fact, he was part of the commission, the Presidential Commission on Voter Fraud. And we got a chance to introduce ourselves, and it got to Christian. And he said, I'm Christian Adams, and this is what I do. But before I sit down, I just want to get your noting Linda Payne and Ruth Weiss of Election Integrity Project. He said, Election Integrity Project California is the preeminent election fraud organisation in the country. He said their documentation is impeccable. Their investigative process is unmatched. Their documents are court ready. But he said California is a waste of time. And that was like red rain to a bull after being the political director here in California. So I stood up, out of turn I might add, and I said, Christian Adams, you don't know me from a bar of soap. I can tell you, you're wrong. California is not a waste of time. As goes California, so goes America. And if we lose California, America will go down. So he said, I said, and California won the election for Donald Trump. And he laughed. Well, that was like red rain to a bull. So I said to him, mate, don't laugh at me. You have no idea what you're talking about. He said, well, how did California, you didn't even campaign here in California? I said, yes, that's right. That was the plan. Our directions from when I got appointed to staff here from New York, I was on paid staff. When I got back from the convention, we had conference calls every day, and they said, we want you to forget about California. Not because it's a waste of time, but because we can't bring America back if we use California resources to focus on California. We need to win 5 battleground states. And they said, you've got 330,000 volunteers on your books. I said, yes, we have. And we had an organisational structure that never before been seen here in California. 6 regional managers, 14 coalition directors, 42 county captains, and 517 of the 579 or whatever it is, cities covered with the leader. So we were ready to go. We were going to get out the vote. But when they explained it to me, made it very clear. They said, we want you to win 5 battleground states and not put any resources into California. We want you to win Arizona. And I said, yeah, we can do that. We want you to win Pennsylvania. I gulped a couple of times. I said, well, we'll give it a good shot. We want you to win North Carolina. I said, yep, we can do that. And we want you to win Florida. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then when he told me the last one, I said, is 4 out of 5 okay? Because they asked me to win Michigan. Well, guess what? Michigan was won by 10,000 votes.
Yes.
Our organisation put 1.6 million phone calls into Michigan alone in the last week. Hillary bragged to the reporters that we put 1 million phone calls across the country in the last week. We put 1.6 million. That was you, exceptional people here in California, that understood that they had to sacrifice California for a time so that we could win America and then come back to California. So it was California that won, I said to Christian Adams. Well, he got up and left because he'd been embarrassed. I then went on to him about what we did here in California. And then I was asked by Linda Payne and Ruth Weiss to come on as the CEO of Election Integrity Project. Well, we did that, and a great guy, great mate of mine, Randy Borholz. Everybody know who Randy is? He's now secretary of the GOPe. Terrific guy. We'd been working together on election fraud, and he said, why don't we convince Linda and Ruth to do something different? So at the board meeting, I said, okay, Linda, what do you do with your investigation? She said, well, we send them off to the Secretary of State. And we also send them to the registrars. And I said, how's that working out for you? They've been doing this for 6 years. 6 years. And what the legislature or the assembly in Sacramento does is they change the laws to accommodate the failed processes that have been identified by Election Integrity Project. They introduce legislation. So I said, how about we try something new? And she said, what? I said, why don't we go public with our results? Spread it far and wide. She said, but we might be sued. That's a risk we've got to take. This is too big. We went public within 5 weeks. We had Washington Post, Washington Times, Breitbart, New York Times, and even the LA County, the LA Times. Is it LA Times?
Yeah.
LA Times. LA Times reported it on the inside front cover in font 3, but they still reported it. We had those people on board. And within another 5 weeks, we had Judicial Watch ringing us to say we would like to come on board as your legal team. Yeah, exactly. And then 3 weeks later, not to be outdone, Mark Levin's organisation called Landmark Legal came on board to do the felon side of the investigation. So we've got Landmark Legal looking after all the suppression of vote, the felonies that registrars do. Landmark Legal was looking after the voter registration law. Well, they wrote to LA County and the Secretary of State. This is Judicial Watch, and they had to give them 90 days to respond. They responded with, "There's no there." Well, they immediately sued because in all states of California, the voter registration average is 97%. The national average is 75%. It just shows you how dedicated you Californians are. In LA County, it's 1 million registered voters above the maximum that could be registered. In San Diego, it's 138%. In fact, a little town, I won't give you the name of it because it's under investigation, a town south of LA had a 600% turnout in the general election. We had, are you Chinese, sir?
No, Korean.
Korean, well, close enough.
Ouch. Oh no, don't go there.
It's Australian humor.
Okay.
Be brave. But in the Chinese community, we had voters being spoken to in Mandarin and Cantonese that threatened their businesses, threatened their homes, threatened their livelihoods, their families, if you didn't vote a particular way. We had that on video. That is a 5-year term, folks. 5-year term. So we've got a lot going on, and that's your election integrity project. What I want to say is that Linda Payne and Linda Payne mortgaged her house to keep election integrity project on the up. That's the dedication of these women. But they've been doing it on a dime for the last, I don't know, however many years. So California can make a difference. We expose California and the rest of the country will fall into place. Because people don't believe that California can be fixed. Certainly the press doesn't think so, and certainly a lot of the GOPe don't think so. But I believe in California, and I believe she can be fixed. And she can, again, be that kind of light for America.
Redemption.
Absolutely. But we've got to help Election Integrity Project by getting online, donating, and giving them resources. Do you know, in California, in LA County, 1 million, San Diego, 138%. You guys, you are so dedicated. You impress me beyond anything I've ever seen. Because even when you die, what a vote.
Oh, Lord.
Can you wrap it up in about 3 minutes?
Yep, I can.
And then we'll have
Sure.
question and answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So not only that, you've got over 9,000 people, over 108 that vote. You know, that's the fountain of youth here in California alone. That's where I live. That's why I don't look so old. I mean, I'm actually 105, but look at me. So the bottom line is, you have an opportunity to bring your country back. You have an opportunity to take it back because you've been given a voice again by Mr. Trump. You've been given a voice to have that debate across the table. You've been given a voice to have that discussion with family and friends. But please understand, you're going to lose people. But it's a loss that is worth taking, because your granddaughters and your grandsons and your great-granddaughters and great-grandsons are the people that are going to inherit what we've left behind. And what does the Bible say? Leave your children with an inheritance. Well, we can either do that and give them something to be proud of, or we can remain mute, remain silent, and let the liberal progressives take over. 7 men who ruled from the grave. Saul Alinsky's sole bid was to get God out of our society. 7 men who ruled from the grave. Kierkegaard, Keynes economics, Soros. Let me just put those.
Okay.
And now I'm done. Here we go. Kierkegaard, Darwin, of course. That's the bedrock of our education system now. Karl Marx, Julius Wellhausen, Sigmund Freud, Dewey, and of course Maynard Keynes. They control the liberal progressive left through Saul Alinsky. Their one aim is to get God out of our society. And what did Paul Harvey say? If I were the devil, have you heard it? Look it up. If I were the devil, I would go about controlling the greatest country the world's ever seen. And I would introduce a whole host of things. And when he finishes, in other words, I will continue to do what I'm doing. We have allowed it to happen in our families, our colleges, our schools, our education system. An education system that should not even be part of the federal government, because the 10th Amendment doesn't allow for it. We've allowed them to take over. And we need to take back. God bless you, and God bless America.